or not. For the record, I don't think Matt Hancock did throw a dead cat into proceedings yesterday when he essentially insulted Dr Rosena Allin-Khan, the Labour MP for Tooting, who now holds a brief in the Shadow Health Department. I don't think he did it on purpose, if you see what I mean. But I do know that we've all been talking about him telling her to watch her tone, lady, instead of whatever it was that she wanted him to answer. So let's start there, if we may, Rosena. Thank you for your time this morning. What were you actually What were you trying to get out of the Secretary of State yesterday before he reacted so strangely?
Well, I think he reacted strangely because he didn't like the content of the question, which is the thing I was trying to get out, which was, well, I've been working on the front line along so many incredible people who've been working longer and harder than I have. And on some of our shifts, we've had to break the most awful news to families and watch their world ripped apart as we tell them that those they love the most have died or are dying. And it is crippling. And I then went on to actually question the fact that we didn't have a testing strategy. We were too slow to roll out mass testing, and that we had got it wrong there. And then I basically asked Matt Hancock whether he would commit to 100,000 tests each day going forward, because we do know the numbers have been manipulated, which I also mentioned. And then I asked him at the end, does he acknowledge that many frontline staff feel as though the deaths and the hearts that they're breaking, many of those could have been avoided? And, you know, not caused unnecessary grief to these families. If we'd got the testing right, that we wouldn't have to see so many families grieving unnecessarily.
You know now, and I know now, that both the Deputy Chief Medical Officer and this morning Matt Hancock have finally admitted that a lot of the decisions taken and a lot of the failings that unfolded were because we didn't have the kit in place. So there's almost three strands of conversation here. There is, why didn't you do the testing? Well, they claimed that they were following the science to start with, and they're now claiming, the same people now claiming that they didn't have the kit. In normal circumstances, that would be the mother of all alarm bells. But in these curious circumstances, and perhaps because they reach for comments like, the Honourable Lady should watch her tone, be more like her male colleague. Not something I think he would have said to a male MP. I don't know how you feel about that. But how do you keep an eye on the truth when they're trying to move it around so much and so quickly?
I think it's by scrutinising. It's by
now is not the time for scrutinising. Do keep up.
It's always the time. I mean, I've been talking about this right from the beginning. I had a PMQ back in March, when I dropped my deputy leadership campaign to sort of focus on COVID and go back to the front line. I had a PMQ where I said, where was the forward planning for PPE for staff? Where was the rollout of mass testing? Because we know that the government scrapped testing in the early days. And I said, why are social distancing measures merely just suggestions? And I think that saying they were following the science but never making it transparent was really an issue. And particularly the one thing that I have been talking about so frequently is the fact that we haven't been following the same advice as the rest of the world when it comes to self-isolation, whereas the rest of the world are following 14 days self-isolation from when the symptoms stop. We were saying it's okay to leave the house and go out into the community 7 days after the symptoms had started. And I was saying, where is the evidence? Be transparent. Can you show us? And transparency was never forthcoming. So I think, yes, of course, I want the government to succeed. And of course, I will say when things have gone well. But everybody wants answers. Everybody wants transparency. And it is the job of us all collectively to be able to question the government and say, look, please, can you tell us why this is happening? And yesterday, when I asked that question, though I'm a politician and though I am, in the shadow cabinet, I was asking that as an NHS frontline worker who knows what it's like to go home in tears, because you've just watched people fall apart in front of you and you think to yourself, could this have been avoided?
Well, I mean, you'd have hoped that might be obvious to the Secretary of State for Health, but I wonder whether it was obvious to you immediately how inappropriately he'd spoken, or was it one of those things of which the impact only fully hit you a little bit later when the dust had settled? Because we did a double take here when we heard it. It was, what did he say? He told her to watch her tone. That's sort of Victorian almost.
I think it's the sign of somebody who is wrestling with the content of what they've just heard, understanding that maybe some of what has said they actually believe to be true, and how do they wrestle with that. But look, I'm not looking for an apology. I've had a phenomenal response. Publicly, people have really been supportive, and thank you for being so supportive. But if he does want to make it up to me, he can give NHS and care staff a pay